Welcome to the Adapty Quickstart guide for iOS, specifically with UIKit. Today we're going to be taking a quick look at the Focus Journal project, which is just a simple application that really is designed to be a scaffolding to help you understand how to integrate the Adapty SDK into your own project if you have a UIKit-based app. So we'll do a quick demo really quick just so you can see kind of what it looks like and how it works. The Focus Journal here is very simple, just a couple of screens. It allows you to enter in your thoughts for the day. You can then save those entries, and if you want to see the history, that's something that we're going to gate behind premium functionality. So if I hit the history button right now in the starter project, it's just kind of a mocked version of a paywall. It just simply has an upgrade button, and if you press it, it upgrades you to premium, and then when you look at history again, now you can actually see the history view. We're going to be integrating the Adapty SDK and then actually showing a real paywall in place of that mock paywall once we're done. So that's the functionality of the application. Let's jump right in and start actually integrating the Adapty SDK into the project. First thing we want to do is to store some constants that we're going to need to use throughout the application. And so an easy way to do that is just to make an AppConstants file. We're going to make one here just called AppConstants that has a couple things in it: an API key, an access level ID, and a placement ID. The API key is you're going to get from your account, and it is an API key to give you access to this app to your account itself on Adapty's dashboard. The access level ID is a way to connect the payments and purchases that people make to various kinds of access within your app. The default is often just called premium and just gives you access to everything, but you are welcome to design that however you like depending on how your app functions. And then lastly, a placement ID. This is telling the system where paywalls belong within an application's flow. So whether it be like after onboarding or in settings or wherever you might put it, you're going to set up a placement ID within Adapty's dashboard that signifies that location in your app and give it a unique name so that we know how to call a specific paywall. So ours is going to be called OnTap History because we're going to trigger the paywall when the history button is pressed. So the very first thing we want to do to actually set up the Adapty SDK is install it into our project. So we're going to go up here to the project properties and then over here into the project section and package dependencies. And we're going to choose plus. If you don't have the URL already set up in your list, you can grab it from the description of the video and then paste it up here in the search box. Otherwise, in my case, I've used it a few times, so it's going to appear here at the top. And we're going to say add package for Adapty SDK-iOS. And then it's going to ask us of the libraries that are contained within that package, which of them do we want to add to our target? And so we want to add the Adapty and AdaptyUI packages, the libraries within the package, to our project. That's because the main Adapty SDK is contained within that first library, and then all the stuff related to Paywall Builder paywalls is going to be found inside of AdaptyUI. Click Add Package, and then it goes ahead and downloads and adds that to our project. Should appear here in the lower left. The next thing is to actually set it up and activate the Adapty SDK on app launch. So we're going to go into the SceneDelegate of this UIKit application and set this up so that we can configure and then activate the Adapty SDK. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into the import area and import both of the frameworks. Once we have those imported, then we're going to go down here to the function called Scene will connect to session with options. And you can see here that we're setting up our window and our HomeViewController and our nav controller to actually activate everything. There's no storyboard in this application, so we're doing our view initialization right here in this scene function. Below all of this code, this boilerplate code that sets up the window in this view controller, we're going to paste in a task, an asynchronous task, that is going to go and get a configuration for Adapty. So we pass in our API key, and we create an Adapty configuration, and then on the Adapty library, we call this activate with config, and that's going to basically set up the API key and everything, register the application with the server, all that good stuff. And then the other line is going to activate the AdaptyUI library. It's very similar. It's just set up so that, again, we can use Paywall Builder paywalls inside of our application. So now that we have the Adapty SDK configured and initialized in the app launch, we want to then check to see if the user has paid for premium content, because there's no point in even showing a paywall if they already have it, right? So we want to do that first, and we want to do that every time we launch, in fact. So we've got a profile manager here that is set up to manage and sort of deal with the profile itself. And so in here, we're going to add a little bit of code that will allow us to check against the SDK and see if they are subscribed. First things first is to import the Adapty framework into this file. And then we want to set up a property that will allow us to manage the profile, the Adapty profile of the customer. So I'm going to come down here underneath the other properties, paste in the customer profile. You can see it's of type Adapty profile. And we're going to set it up with a did set that I'll explain in just a minute. That will kind of help us with managing the access levels and the premium content. So after setting up that customer profile, we're going to come down here to the bottom and just add in some functions that will help us to manage the profile itself. So refreshing it and updating it as part of a purchase. So refreshProfile really is just a way to get the freshest data from Adapty. You can see we call Adapty.getProfile. That will go and pull the latest one. And inside the profile, you've got your standard and custom attributes. And you've also got things like the subscription information, whether they subscribed, what the access level is, all that good stuff. So we're going to grab that profile and then set it to the customer profile property. And you can see in both cases, whether we're purchasing or we're just refreshing, it's going to update that property. And then the did set will activate, and it will go through and actually grab the access level out of the customer profile, the specific one that we care about, the one from the constants file. And then we're going to check that access level and see if we are either active, in a grace period, or lifetime. So active hopefully is straightforward. It's they've paid and they're a current subscriber. Grace period would be if you've enabled that in your App Store Connect dashboard, you have the ability to give customers a grace period on billing issues. So if you have that enabled and they're currently in a grace period, we would let that happen. We let them have access as well. And then also if they have lifetime access, so something you can do inside of the Adapty dashboard, you can assign somebody to have permanent access forever. And so in any of those cases, if any of those are true, then the user has quote unquote paid, and we want to unlock premium content. So we're going to set isPremium to true. Otherwise, we set it to false. The advantage of doing it this way is that anytime you update the profile, it's going to automatically update that isPremium Boolean, and then you can just rely on that isPremium Boolean throughout your project to decide whether to grant or deny access to premium content or functionality without having to every single time dig through that, the entitlements, the access levels, things like that, to see if they have actually paid and have access. So as long as you keep your profile up to date and you use it the way this is working here, you're going to automatically have an accurate and up-to-date Boolean to tell you whether they've paid or not. So now we have the ability to check whether or not our customer has paid for subscription. And now what we want to do is actually do that check, right? See if at app launch, when the app is instantiated and is running, if they have access to premium content, and if so, we can grant them that, and otherwise we can show them the paywall. So in this UIKit app, the base view controller is the HomeViewController. So that's where we're going to put the functionality that checks for that. And so we're going to go into HomeViewController, and then first things first, import our Adapty and AdaptyUI frameworks. And then we're going to go into the viewDidLoad function, and we're going to add a little bit of functionality to perform the check for whether or not they have subscribed. So it's a task, it's an asynchronous task. We're calling the ProfileManager shared singleton and doing the refresh profile on it, which, like I said previously, it's going to go get that profile and then automatically update our isPremium Boolean. So now that we have that, if we scroll down and we look at the Show History button, you can see the way that it works is it actually just checks the Profile Manager to see if Premium is enabled. If it is, it shows the History View Controller, and if it is not, it shows the Paywall View Controller, which that's our dummy controller that we built before. We're going to replace that with a real paywall, but makes it really easy. You can just simply check the Boolean and then either grant access or deny access. So to actually show a paywall, we need to set up a couple of things. In the HomeViewController, we're going to come up here to where the properties are defined, and we're going to add a new property that is called PaywallConfig, and it's of type PaywallConfiguration, and it simply stores all of the data about a remotely configured paywall builder style paywall. And so we're going to grab that and hang on to it so we have it available to us to use whenever the user decides to tap the button and try and show the paywall. We want to pre-flight that so that we have it ready to go, so that we're not making the user wait to go fetch that remotely and then show it to them when they're trying to get to the paywall. So now that we have that paywall config, we can go ahead and actually perform the work to go fetch the paywall remotely from Paywall Builder. And so in that same task that we just created in view.load, we're going to go right below where it says refresh paywall, or sorry, profile, and we're going to add in a couple of lines of code. The first thing is to go get the paywall object itself. And so you just call Adapty.getPaywall and you provide the placement ID of the placement that you want to try and show. So that's how we're connecting paywalls and placements inside of the application, and that they're also connected on the Adapty dashboard side. And so you fetch paywalls by their placement ID, which we've just got stored as an app constant. And then once you have the paywall object, we then need to pass that into the AdaptyUI framework that will go and get the paywall configuration, which is kind of everything we need to actually show the paywall to users. So once we have that, we store that in our paywall config property. So now let's get to the good stuff where we actually show a paywall for real. First thing we're going to do is come down into the show history function, and we're going to delete the code that used the dummy paywall for purposes of demo. We don't need that anymore. We're going to show a real one now. So we're going to change the else block to be an else if, and we're going to try and unwrap the paywall config. We can't actually show a paywall if we don't have a paywall configuration object, and so we want to make sure we unwrap that optional, make sure that it's real before we try and use it. Next up, we're actually going to perform the work to show a paywall. So we're going to pass, or we're going to put into the else block a do try catch that will go out and create the paywall controller and then show it. So AdaptyUI.PaywallController with and delegate. You're going to pass in the config as one of the arguments, and that's how it knows what to show, what the actual configuration is for that paywall. The delegate we'll get to in just a second. And then once we have the Paywall View Controller, you're just going to show it like any other view controller you would show in your UIKit app. So you can push it onto a nav stack, you can show it modally, do some kind of custom animation. However you want to show that paywall is up to you. You just have access to that view controller, and you can show it however works best for you. So with this, we have the ability to show a paywall now, and because of the easy use of the isPremium, we can either show the history or the paywall depending on whether they've paid or not. And the last step is going to be to just respond to the paywall events that occur. So we do that through the delegate. And you can see that in this call that we made, we assigned this view controller class to be the delegate of the AdaptyUI.PaywallController. And so we need to define what that looks like. At the bottom of your HomeViewController, you're going to want to add an extension to the HomeViewController, and you're going to want to make the HomeViewController conform to the AdaptyPaywallController delegate. So when you do that, you're going to get a variety of functions that you'll need to implement. You can see here, I've just sort of shown you the basics, the ones that you really need. There are other ones that you're free to implement as well if those edge cases are something that you need to cover. But at the basic level, we've got restoration and purchasing with failure and successful outcomes for each. So you can see did fail restore with, did finish restore with, did fail purchase, and did finish purchase. Those are kind of the 4 core ones that you need to manage either restoring purchases or making new purchases, whichever the case may be. And in the case of failure states, you're going to receive errors. And so you can use those errors to either look for things in them or to show them to the user, whatever makes sense for you in your application. And then you're going to want to also make sure that you dismiss the presentation of the view that you have. So if you've popped it onto or you've pushed it onto a nav stack, or you have shown it modally, you're going to want to reverse that animation, right, to get the paywall to go away. So you can see we've got a pop in each of these to pull that off the stack. And in the case of the successful purchase, we want to update the profile. So we're going to look inside of the purchase result and grab the success out of it, and then specifically the profile object within that success. And when we do that, we're going to just pass that profile into our ProfileManager singleton so that it can update the customer profile and then therefore update the isPremium Boolean. So with just one line of code, we've got it kind of all wired up to know whether or not the user has paid and is ready to use our premium content. Here you can see the final product in action. If we hit the Show History button, we see a Paywall Builder paywall, which allows us to choose from our subscriptions and unlock premium access to our application. Now, if we enter a new focus for today and save that entry, we can visit the history screen, which will show us a premium content rather than the paywall. Thanks for watching.